the country, a scholar, a professor, somebody who has dedicated his career to working to the betterment of our community. And I just wish he lived in Michigan so we could claim him, but he lives here in New Jersey. Please, a big hand for our brother, Abed Awad.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Amir. I actually know Abu Amir, and I saw him a couple of weeks ago. وهذا الشبل من ذاك الأسد.
The other table?
His father organized the Palestinian community in South Jersey and in Philadelphia, so he's following in his father's footsteps. Yeah. I want to thank the board for inviting me tonight. It's an honor to be with all of you here tonight. It's a difficult time for us today watching in real time the genocide against our people in Gaza. I still cannot get the story of Brother Medhoun and what happened to his brother and the countless suffering and genocide that is visited upon our people. The magnitude of what's happening in Gaza is worse than what we know. Once the reporting starts after a ceasefire, we will see the true alarming and horrific and heinous genocide against our people. The ethnic cleansing has been funded, supported, and cheered by President Biden and Congress. It's important for us to understand how is it possible for President Biden and Congress to dehumanize and deal with the Palestinians in such a manner. This dehumanization of Palestinians has become mainstreamed and normalized. American politicians without concern or fear of consequence, and hopefully that's going to change. They say, finish the job once and for all. Finish all of them. Turn Gaza into a parking lot. There's no innocent civilians in Gaza. Imagine these racist politicians say this about Jews, about blacks, about LGBT, about any other community. This call for genocide is mainstreamed and accepted only when it pertains to Palestinians. This is acceptable mainstream American political discourse, and we here tonight have to understand that because we need to work to change it. If we don't understand the underlying purpose of how it's possible for mainstream American political discourse to dehumanize our community and accept a genocide, we're not going to be able to move forward. But we're fighting back. Our allies in the progressive movement are giving us support and momentum. The squad, whether it's AOC, Ilhan, Presley, Rashida, Jamal Bowman, Greg, Summer Lee, they've transformed the question of Palestine in the progressive movement to become an election issue. This has never happened in the history of the United States political, electoral work until recently. We need to amplify their voices, we need to support them. Yes, we need to raise money for our humanitarian work in Gaza, but we also need to understand if we do not build here, we're not going to be able to help our brothers and sisters in Gaza. We all know there's a shift growing within the Democratic Party and in the country towards Palestine. This shift, however, is limited to young Americans. A recent Harvard-Harris poll found 80% of Americans support Israel. The only positive finding in that recent poll, this was from last week, was that only 31% of Americans young, between the ages of 18 to 34, supported President Biden during this war and genocide. It's 15 points less than past September. So the shift in the country is with the young. Another recent poll, but it was framed, the first poll was framed, are you with Hamas, or are you with Israel? 80% said they were with Israel. Another poll that basically asked, do you support a ceasefire? 80% of Democrats, rank and file, support a ceasefire now. Yet 99% of our elected officials are against a ceasefire. So the disconnect between the young Democrats, the rank and file, with the leadership is very obvious. They're losing the young voters. This has not gone unnoticed by the Zionists in America. Last week, the president of the ADL, in a leaked recording, said, we don't have a problem between progressives and Democrats and Republicans. We have a generational problem in America. It is the young are favoring Palestine. So they donate and earmark the majority of their resources to do what? To try to silence the young Americans, the young that are learning the truth about Palestine. So it's not a surprise that after October 7, we are witnessing the most vicious campaign to silence our community with a focus on college campuses. I'm a board member of Palestine Legal and I'm on the national board of ADC. We received over 500 intakes within the first week from students from around the country. This is a orchestrated, well thought out, funded plan to silence Palestinian youth and Palestinian advocates around the country. So this is just a brief context I just wanted to provide you. And I'm sorry to say that we as a community have failed Palestine. Yes, we raise money, we come to meetings, but we really have not made much of a difference for our people. Except for successes that we have with PAC, which we acknowledge, most of the successes that we have are limited. We have the resources, we have the know-how to hold these political establishment accountable for supporting apartheid, hate, genocide, and occupation. But we still failed, and we've been failing nonstop. And I'm going to explain why we have failed and what is the roadmap, in my opinion, to try to change the course and move towards accountability. First, we must build and invest in our institutions. We need to build our civil society in the United States. The power of the Zionist influence in the world is the nature of their influence is institutional. They build institutions. We haven't built as many institutions as we need. Excluding synagogues, this is a study from 2014, excluding synagogues and organizations that do not disclose their financial records, in 2014, the Jewish communities, federations, schools, healthcare and social service organizations, Israel aid groups, cultural and communal organizations, and advocacy groups report net assets of $26 billion. This is $26 billion in 2014 that's endowed. They're endowments that continue to give. And that's 2014. By this time, 10 years, the likelihood based on the market and the increase in the stock market, you're talking closer to 40 billion that is endowed to support and fund their influence in this country. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League alone, has a $90 million budget, annual budget. They raise $90 million and they spend $90 million. They have a $100 million endowment. The United Holy Land Foundation is the oldest, most successful organization we have in our community. And I love them and I'm proud of them and they inspire. What is the amount of our endowment? After 50 years, where is our endowment? Where's the ability for us to sustain the United Holy Land Foundation for the next 10 generations? Because this board is going to go, their children are going to come. And we can't have our organizations from paycheck to paycheck. We raise $1,000 today, we spend $1,000, we distribute it. We have the resources. The fact that they have 40 billion under management is not that crazy. Our community is very wealthy all along. We have to invest. We just don't plan, we don't have a strategic plan on how to build these endowments. The Zionists plan 50 years ahead. They attract the brightest, the most professional to lead their organization. The head of the ADL's salary is $480,000. That's their executive director. You're gonna get the brightest. We hire volunteers, and when we hire employees, we pay them under market value. What do we expect on sustaining and building a professional community in the Palestinian community that's going to lead these organizations and be effective. The organizations now that are doing amazing work, defending our community under this assault: Palestine Legal, ADC, Sahar Aziz Center for Security and Race and Care. We need to support them. We need to help them endow these organizations. We have to make a demand that the Holy Land Fund also have a plan for a long-term campaign to endow the organization so that we can sustain these scholarships and these orphanage indefinitely, and not to be worried about every time having to raise the money. That was number one, invest in our institutions. Because institutions build civil society, they build influence. In fact, the Muslim Waqf, 75% of arable land in Turkey was in an endowment. 40% of land in Jerusalem is an endowment. 60% of Algeria's land was in a waqf and an endowment. The Islamic society, the Islamic civilization was built on endowments and built to be able to sustain the charitable and the political work that was done. Second, we must tell our story. Well, how do we formulate our messaging? What is the most effective messaging? We must invest in focus groups and research to determine what works. The Zionists, unlike us, hired the most prominent pollster in the Republican Party. His name is Frank Luntz. I follow him all the time. They hired him in 2009 to write a report. How can we defeat and win in the media war in the United States? So he prepared a report, and the report created a strategy to neutralize Israel's critics in the media and promote and improve Israel's standing in the United States. Massive report. It was leaked. I have a copy. It's old. They probably updated it already, 10 years old. 18 chapters. Let me give you a glimpse in that report. Chapter 2, a glossary of words that work. Chapter 3, how to talk about Palestinian self-government. Chapter 6, Gaza, Israel right to self-defense. They also included in the appendix a copy of Hamas's covenant so that they can use that when they're in the news. They want to destroy and annihilate Israel. Anti-Semitism, Nazis, Holocaust. These folks hired the best PR, the best pollsters. They did focus groups. This cost millions to put together so that they can defeat the truth. Because in the end, as our brothers and sisters throughout the evening, well, the truth is on our side. We have the moral high ground. They need to invest to turn truth into their side. IMEU, for any of you who knows the Institute for Middle East Understanding, they're doing amazing work on the messaging. We need to invest in them. We need to follow what they're doing. But we should also, as a community, commission a team to prepare a guide for our activists, for our organizations, because all of us are all over the place. We don't have a unified message. And no one knows what is the messaging until we do the research. We have to bring these focus groups, bring these scholars, interview them. They will produce what catches on. So that's number 2. Invest in institutions, understand how our messaging. Number 3, we'll not defeat the Zionists alone. We need allies. We must fight for justice everywhere. We must become part of the progressive movement at all levels. We must support our allies. Palestine is a moral value compass for all people seeking freedom in the world. When I was a student activist, I used to be active in the student movement. I would be in meetings with the Irish Republican political arm Sinn Féin. I would be with the ANC folks. I would be with the revolutionaries from Latin America. All of our student groups were involved, building together these allies, building together these coalitions. We have to do the same here in the US. You're seeing a shift in the US in favor of Palestine. It's because our Arab Americans and Muslim American communities are becoming integrated and growing in American civil society at all levels, from academia to startups, to technology, and to business. But in large part, the change is because many progressive groups in the African American community, Latino community, the Jewish American community, the LGBT community has been a major advocate for Palestinian rights throughout the United States at all levels in academia. So we have to support them. They have made Palestine a progressive issue. This is huge that we are part of the progressive movement. So that's 3, work with our allies. 4th, we must focus on our political energy and political contributions to support anti-establishment candidates. The establishment candidates, as I mentioned earlier, 99% of the establishment do not want a ceasefire. You're not going to change their mind. They're on the Israel AIPAC payroll. Done. The issue is the younger anti-establishment candidates. That's where we have to invest our money. I'm sure many of you are aware that AIPAC just earmarked $100 million to defeat the squad. These are just a couple of names. Just like Brother Ahmed said, poor Rashida, this one voice, and they are going to put every amount of money possible to defeat her. Last week, a Zionist donor, for many of you have read, gave a candidate $20 million to run against Rashida. $20 million to run against her. We need to pool our money to have a louder voice. It can't be, doctor writes a check, I write a check. You have to pick the political operatives in our community and let them be the carriers of that voice. When we pool our money, our voice is louder. When I worked inside the Democratic operative politics, if I walked in with 15, 20 checks for 30, 40 grand, I was able to make demands. But if everybody pays it directly to the candidate, that fragments and waters down our voice. The time now, literally, for the political work that I'm doing, Amir's doing, and many of us, and I'm working on a major project that will be announced in the next week, we literally can defeat Genocide Joe in the 24 election. He will not win without Michigan. He will not win without Pennsylvania. He will not win without Georgia. We are very strong in those 3 states, especially in Michigan. The Democratic Party is beyond concerned. They are in paranoia. And you see some of the shift in the policies of this administration on the ceasefire is because the Democrats realize we are going to cost this Genocide Joe the election in 2024, and we're not going to care. They have to be held accountable. I don't care if Trump is going to be president. I don't care whoever. They have to pay. They will not take us seriously until we get them to pay for supporting genocide and killing our people. So I believe this is a nice rough draft of a roadmap that we can get started with. Post October 7th, nothing is going to be like October 7th. We're going to change everything. Our people were slaughtered and gave their lives for freedom and dignity. Let's regroup and focus and make sure that their lives are not lost in vain. Occupation, apartheid, injustice are not sustainable. Palestinian Americans have a sacred responsibility, all of us here. We're not giving up our lives. We're not, I'm wondering what I'm gonna have for dinner. I'm still hungry. My people can't drink, they can't eat, they can't find shelter. So what are we giving? We're gonna get doxxed, we're gonna get some threats, maybe I'm gonna lose a couple of clients, maybe I'm not gonna be able to teach at a university, but my people are losing their lives. So we have a sacred responsibility, anchored in the blood of our martyrs, in Gaza and in Palestine, to dedicate our time, effort, and money to do our part in America, for our people to realize freedom, liberation, and dignity. And I know we can do it. Thank you.